Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. You are in the superhero battle room with John Slocum. We're going to bring him on the stage for a second, but just a little quick announcement. This is our last episode that will not have commercials in there. So if you are wanting to go over and brand with War Hero to Superhero, this is the time to go and do it. 2 spots are going to be up and taken, and we're going to do up to 6. So if you're wanting to increase your brand, increase your awareness, we do up to 4 episodes of recording a week, and then we launch 2 episodes a week. So you will get at least 8 episodes a week of your brand through the mid-roll of our episode. So we would love to go over and to serve you. But right now we're serving the man that is our guest. This man has served his country and now empowers you to heal through science. And as of each episode, as he's speaking, see if you can go over and guess in live or the replay which branch that he is from. So we're going to bring John on, and he's going to share his wisdom and his story. Hey, John, do I have you?
Hey, how's it going tonight, Daniel?
It is going wonderful, especially during this fall season. Little Debbie went away, and the season is a lot cooler. So I'm glad Little Debbie has had its cakes and be done.
Well, I have the good fortune of being in South America right now, and I'm actually in Cali, Colombia.
And we're getting our first international person. We haven't had one in a long time.
Well, I'm up in the mountains. The weather's nice. And as I said, it's great to be here and share some nuggets with you.
All right. So let's talk about your military time. What inspired you to serve and to join our great military?
Well, my dad was a lifer in the Air Force. He did 22 years in the Air Force. And my entire neighborhood served at during the Vietnam era. I'm actually a Vietnam era vet. And, the thoughts of the day, the feelings of the day, of that day was to do whatever we could to serve our country. So even though I was younger at the time, I always knew that at some point in time, it would be my time to serve. And I did that.
Wow. So serving during the Vietnam era. Wow. Must have been a crazy, chaotic time to go over and to serve, because it seems, at least from the history books and all the other vets I talked to, it's like underappreciated and going out there, and then the services were very little and everything else. So how long did you actually serve in the military, and actually when did you leave?
Well, I'll actually be 70 years old next year. I served from 72 to 74. I was stationed in Heidelberg, Germany. And fortunately for us at the time, even though we were prepared to go over to Nam, the war stopped. The war came to an end. But we were still being attacked even in Germany. So it made for some very tense times. And, I was a combat medic, and some of the scenes that happened even in Germany, it really made for a hard time for us. And some of the things I'll share is, what we can do, when we experience things like that, and we just can't let them go.
Yeah, I would think it's very interesting on how a war is never just in the land of where it's at. It can affect so many different places. You have second and third and fourth order effects and everything else. So how was the transition after the 2 years, especially as a combat medic? Probably one of the hardest jobs to do in the military.
Well, the transition was, very unsteady at the beginning. Because, as you mentioned, as Vietnam vets, most of us felt unappreciated. And in my case, I felt abandoned. So we didn't get that hero's welcome. And many of us, chose to just forget about the experience that we just had, and to try to deal with the issues or the problems that we would later learn, would be symptoms or forms of PTSD. We had to deal with that on our own, because and during that time, the last thing that we wanted to do, especially as something that could interfere with our career, was, step up and say, I need some help mentally. So my message today would be, if there's something bothering you, if there's something there, do not continue to let that fester and go on over and over again. Because the way we're made, the way our nervous system is made, it will do everything it can so that we don't feel pain, so we don't feel pressure. But if it does that, we get locked into that behavioral pattern or a loop. So, it's important to get that out and talk about it with others. The worst thing that we could do is isolate ourselves. And that's what held me back in my transition. I isolated myself, and it ended up costing me and later in life and relationships and in my profession as well, because I held it in, and men did not talk about their mental state at that time for fear as being labeled as unfit or even crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I worked in mental health from 2010 to 2012, and the stigma is still there in that particular regard. Men and women, but I think it's more of men, is that we go over and we're the provider, we're the protector, we'll do the transactional things, but we're mentally, we're emotionally, we're spiritually, we're psychologically hurting. And then our cups get tainted. Like, this cup is transparent because of the green screen, but it will either have clear water or dirty water. And a lot of times, if we don't go over and like learn how to actually get that water to be clean, we'll just spill that dirty water over everybody. So that must be really hard for your generation, that literally, psychologically, transactionally, even in history books, says that they were the abandoned generation.
Yeah, we really had no outlet. And I liken it to it's like you're holding a ball, a beach ball underwater. You imagine yourself in the ocean, and you're holding the ball down. You're trying to keep it down, but at some point, as you're pushing it deeper and deeper to hold it down, at some point you're going to lose grip. You're not going to have the energy to hold it down anymore, and it's really as if you're living life, holding on to something that you can't control, and when it erupts, there will be collateral damage. And the worst thing about it is you won't be able to do anything about it because you really are stuck in a behavioral loop, and your feelings and the way you feel about yourself, drives the way you feel. That drives the way that works. And we can literally see that in the brain, at specific brain waves. This will be in the high beta pattern, that would persist even if you're in a situation where there is no danger. We would be able to see that there's something there that you're holding on to, and now we have the ability and the technology to be able to help someone and allow them to use the gifts that they have to heal themselves. Because right now, and everything that we've been offered from society and from all the other institutions, it really hasn't worked for us. So we have to do something radical. We have to do something new. And that something new is to depend on ourselves, understand what we are, what we're made of. And I tell everyone we're one, we're one cell. We started as one. It formed into 37 trillion cells in our body. Each one of those cells has an energy source. They create life. They have memory. They do everything to live. And the main job of those cells is to make sure that we're safe. So it's our feelings that drives the energy in these cells. But we've literally been cut off from that. And most of us cannot feel who we are. We can only feel what we see. So we don't have 37 trillion cells. We are 37 living energetic cells. And once we understand that, we can heal. And there's nothing that we can see that this energetic force cannot undo. And believe it or not, high value emotions such as love, joy, and peace is able to bring our brain waves down. And at that point, we can literally determine how we want to feel through the magic of plasticity. And then we also understand what the placebo effect is. If we believe it, it goes into that when we know it, then it's a possibility. So we all know the placebo effect. If we feel that we're healing from something, someone gives us a sugar pill, it's been proven over and over again, how we heal ourselves. And that's what I'm talking about right now. The things that we can do to heal ourselves using the power and the energy that we have inside of ourselves, as opposed to looking outside. So we're coming to save ourselves, and that's the message that I'm delivering tonight.
Wow. So we are trillionaires in a sense. So when
Yes, we
everybody's
are.
going over and
Listen,
struggling,
Dan, listen, the number, I hate to throw the number out there, because when we're talking about a trillion, if you count it from 1 to 1 trillion, it would take you over 30,000 years, right? And,
wow.
and we're talking 37 trillion. We don't have numbers. We don't have words to express, the number of connections and the energy that we have going on in each of those cells. But they all started as one. They're all governed by our nervous system. And the nervous system will take one of those brain waves, one of the part of our nervous system that will go from our brain all the way into our stomach and keeps track of everything that's going on using neurons, which are very special cells. And they're the only cells that can communicate and create and produce hormones or chemicals at the same time.
That's like a mind blow. So at least about 1 trillion of my cells is overloaded. So
Bro, listen, they're doing the job for you. It's our job to understand what they're doing, how to connect to them, and understand, they're doing their job according to how we feel. How we feel affects how we think. And this is where meditation comes in. If we understand those brain waves, and we can get ourselves out of these high beta patterns, where we're afraid, we don't know what's going to happen next. The things that have happened to us in the past, that they're still weighing us down. In my case, I blamed, as I said, this army for turning his back on me. And I held that in for so long, so there was nothing that could change that. I went through every therapy possible. But when you turn on the power of these cells, and they respond extremely well to what we call high value emotions as love, joy, and peace, you should see how they automatically settle down. And I went from having a serious stroke 12 years ago. No, I'm sorry, almost 20 years ago. And I was able to heal from that, without any major deficits, by simply connecting and understand that how I feel determines how I heal, how I interact with others, my creativity, my energy in general. If we don't control that, and if we're controlled by fear, then there are parts of the brain that controls our creativity and our emotional control. There are parts of the brain that we really don't have access to.
Wow, that's huge. So was the stroke the main thing that made you pivot to serve your current community, or was it something different?
Yes, it really was the stroke, because I really just wanted to feel better. And, I always understood the power of sharing. So in my mind, if I could feel better and help someone else to feel better as well, that's, putting love in motion, right? Using that power, because I understood the power that it has on our nervous system to make us feel good. And from that love, we can create compassion, and that's the only emotion that we have that would rate higher than love, compassion, because we have two people that understands the power of it working together. So, it was the stroke that began that. But in the end, it was the feelings that I had and the memories that came back up, from feeling unappreciated and still holding those feelings in, from the trauma that I experienced, that allowed me to release that as well. And that's when I really wanted, my fellow vets to understand the liberating effects of that and the power that they have to do that. And we only have to understand that we have to have our feelings. We can control our brain waves through meditation. That not mindless. I won't say mindless. We want targeted meditation. We want to meditate to bring these brain waves down. And what I'm saying right now is we have ways to measure that. And if anyone is in an elevated state for a long period of time, we know what we have to do to help them as well, because they're suffering from something that maybe they can't put their finger on. And the fact that they can't put their finger on it drives them insane. You see, but we inherit, just as we inherit physical traits, we inherit behavioral traits, behavioral patterns, from previous generations. And because we can't see it, we have to have the energy to deal with it. And the only way to do that is to understand what makes us tick, how we feel, and it all begins with the nervous system, the one cell.
Yeah, that is an amazing feat. So you were in the struggle basically from 1974, if I'm doing the math correctly, until you had the stroke 20 years ago, roughly about 2004. So you had 30 years of emotional, psychological, physical damage from there. And then the stroke happened. And then how long did it take for the healing? And also, how do you now deal with those tough times so you can still continue to thrive? Because you might be doing healthy and well, but trials still come even if you have love and compassion and everything else. So how do you get to that next level of like healing, and now you get to that release, especially when things can still happen?
That's I hate this, to say this. That's a good question, but that's a good question. Well, one of the things that we can do is understand the true power that we have to control our nervous system, and we do that by meditating and then using our feelings when we meditate to bring these brain waves down. And once we bring the brain waves down, where the cells are able to do their job as far as healing, and we need that extra energy that we're holding on to be able to heal ourselves, because if we're holding on, we can't heal. So understanding the brain waves, and I'm actually working on a couple of projects now to design the devices that will let us know exactly what our brain waves are and how to use the one specific nerve, that this wonderful nervous system has. It's called the vagus nerve. We have 12 cranial nerves in our brain, and most of them control our hearing, our sight, our speech. But this nerve number 10, it goes from the brain itself. It comes, touches the spinal column, comes out of the mouth, and touches every major organ in the body. When this nerve is relaxed, it literally produces a chemical called acetylcholine. And what that does, it literally stops or impedes or inhibits the production of the stress hormones. So in other words, if something happens to you that really would normally stress you out, it's like you have this buffer. You've been meditating, and you've been putting this in the bank, so that when things come up, you don't respond right away. You have an opportunity to think about what could happen, with a knee-jerk action. So in other words, at this point, once you understand that, you have a connection, a steady connection with the part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, that allows us to make good decisions, based on, what's best for us, what's best for our community, as opposed to, what's going to make me feel good right now, which could result in someone else's not going along with the situation. Right. So, so you really build it up, by understanding, I need to stay in this range. The alpha brain wave is where we need to be, when we're in the zone, when we're in alpha, when we're able to do this writing automatically, we're in alpha. So we can literally, we know what that feels like. Love, joy, and peace gets us there. And we can literally practice that over and over. Plasticity will help us to stay there.
It really sounds like when we go work out and we go get physically stronger and everything else, and that releases chemicals and everything else, you're basically doing meditation exercises to then go over. So when those stresses and when those traumas come and everything else, you're already equipped, and then you still know how to deal with the situation. So then you can continue to heal through the situation. So it sounds like, almost in a sense, that we forget that we'll do physical exercises, we'll go to church and be spiritual, we'll go to counselors and be psychological, but we don't do the mental exercises using that vagus nerve, sorry.
Vagus nerve.
And then doing that. And when we do that, now when these things come, we're learning to respond instead of react. And then we don't have all the stress chemicals, and then we don't need to go to pharmaceutical chemicals, and we can actually be healed long terms, if I'm getting it right.
No, that's very good. And also, I may add that when we're in what's called survival mode, or when we're dysregulated, when we're in fear, or we don't know what's going to come next, and most of us are living like in that situation now, because after COVID, it's like someone flipped the switch on the world, and we don't know what's happening anymore. We don't feel as stable as we used to, and so it's something to be concerned about. So when we are, in that mode, if we don't do something to get ourselves out of it, by meditating and storing that, that acetylcholine up for us to give us that buffer. And not only that, to allow us to think clearly, because fear would be the kryptonite, of what we need to stay calm, to be able to make rational decisions. Living scared, brings us disease. It shortens our lives. It makes us unable to deal with others well, because we don't feel good. And that's what it all comes down to. What I'm literally saying is that we have to practice feeling good. And just like you work out at the gym, guess what? When you're at the gym and you're doing that, the brain literally at that time releases a chemical in your body. It's called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor. And that's like a fertilizer for your neurons, to allow you to create a new you. So that's the type of discipline that we have to have for ourselves. When we have that mental, attitude, that we need to learn how the brain works, how the nervous system works, because that controls how we feel, and how we feel is everything. And now we know how to control it. It's up to us. And this is just a basic level, because we haven't even talked about how to connect to the different cellular energy that we have in our bodies.
Wow. So we have an ultimate nuclear powerhouse within our body to go over and to heal and to break the mental, emotional, psychological stress. And the funny thing is, when you were talking about fear, I was thinking in the Bible, because that's where I come from, that mindset, 365 times it talks about do not be anxious or do not fear. At least once a day, we're not supposed to be fearing. If you look at just
That's
from
right.
a
That's
calendar
right.
calendar thing, so it just goes in hand that if we don't equip ourselves in love and joy and peace and compassion and those types of things, we're not equipping ourselves with those kind of like strengths or fruits or whatever you want to call it, then we are just putting ourselves out to the pasture. Because when you said that you were 70, I didn't even think you were 70. I thought between 45 and 50. That was the oldest I thought. So this even shows that you are looking more youthful than even I was thinking, because fear goes over and ages us. I mean, fear goes over and
Absolutely.
destroys us from the get-go. So if you had to
Absolutely.
give somebody, this is our last question for our session, and then we'll let you do a little call to action. If you had to take yourself either back to 1974, or maybe even when you had the stroke, or maybe you're working with a client, no matter what direction you want to go, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them to take them out of that survival mode and bring them to thriving if you only had a couple minutes with them?
Yeah. Number one, I would say, value wisdom, because wisdom is the, application of the things that we know will benefit not only us, but others. Number two, understand the value and the strength of a family. These are times when we feel safe, and our body and ourselves. I hate to say ourselves, we are ourselves. This is when we have the time to, just relax. And the body loves that. And when we're laughing and when we're smiling, one of the techniques I call it the Alpha 3 smile, and this is guaranteed to break you out of any form of anxiety that you have at the moment, because you're literally using the powers that we talked about, the love, joy, and peace. You're using the energy of that, and you're connecting with the cells in the body, and they just love that. So if you're a lover and you enjoy peace and you understand what that is, you get to use that right away. And the next thing I would say, value wisdom, value family, be radically compassionate with yourself. We've all gone through things. We've all done things. People have done things to us, and we may feel justified. But if we're harboring any resentment, we have to forgive ourselves first before we'll ever be able to forgive anyone else. And we have to be radically compassionate with ourselves. And if we do that, everything else will come to us.
Those sounds very beautiful to go over and to start that journey of healing. So, John, I want to thank you for all the wisdom that you went over and brought on this show and everything else coming from South America. Amazing.
Yeah, bro.
we kept really good signal too. I'm impressed. So
Yeah, it got dark on us, but I'm still here.
yeah. But it's always about the content. It's never about the connection on the Wi-Fi. So I want to thank you for going over and joining us. I want to give you the floor one last time if you want to talk about anything that's coming up or give a little about your book. And then if you have like maybe an awesome quote to close out. And then after that, once you do that 2-second audio pause, we're going to go to credits. So thank you, John. And the floor is yours one last time.
Yes. We have the power and the ability and now the knowledge, to control how we feel. We know that how we feel today, the thoughts that we have in our mind are not ours. We know that 70 to 90% of those did not originate with us. It started with our environment, our church, our parents, the family connections, whether they were good or not healthy. So we have the power to decide how we want to feel. And when we can eliminate anything that may have, set us on a course that's not good for ourselves, because basically we did not know. So forgive yourself, love yourself, love others, and let's make this world a better place. My book is called The Science of Feeling Good. You can find it on Amazon. And it's a pleasure to be here and share this information with you all tonight.